good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The following show is just horrifying. Beware.
Sheriff, you're not cheating on your wife if you eat my lemon square.
Your lemon squares taste like ass.
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking otaku and kawaii. We're talking the precursor to Black Swan. And we're talking about a slasher film where all of the victims are men and no women die. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking I'm a pop idol, not an actress.
Okay, Jodie Foster.
Everyone, we are discussing the classic, I guess now classic anime, Perfect Blue. And yeah, Joe, this is one that you really wanted on this schedule.
This is true. Yes, I've been waiting for a couple of years to talk about this, so I was very excited when it became a little bit more publicly accessible on a streamer, but also it just got a really gorgeous new Blu-ray release about a month and a half ago, maybe longer at this point. But yeah, folks, if you have not checked this out, this could be a confusing episode because there's a lot of doubles going on, so we do recommend checking out the movie.
Yes, and it's a very brisk 80 minutes, and boy, yes. Oh boy, was I happy about that, Joe.
Right? It knows exactly what it's doing, and then it gets the fuck out.
It really, really does. But okay, well, so before we jump into this, why don't we bring in our guest waiting in the wings? Because we have a return guest, everyone. She is a film critic for the Austin Chronicle and the programming director of the Austin Asian American Film Festival and a film booker at the Alamo Drafthouse. You may also remember her from our episodes on Fatal Frame and The Handmaiden. Please welcome back Jenny Nulf.
Hello.
Hello. You ready to talk Perfect Blue, Jenny?
Oh, I so am.
Well, okay, so y'all are going to be the drivers in this episode because I am completely new to this film. When did y'all first see this? Jenny, go first.
I was actually trying to remember that the other day. I think I saw it for the first time before I had Letterboxd. So that would be placing it like maybe in 2013, I think. Because I got Letterboxd in 2014. And I know I had seen it before I logged it. And I was looking at that today. And I was like, no, I saw it before that date.
Damn you, Letterboxd. Those dates don't add up.
Oh, my God. I guess, how did y'all hear about this? Because I heard about this through the grapevine just merely a few years ago, but I really had no idea this movie existed.
I'll let Joe go first.
Okay, so I had a friend in high school. We did karate together, and one of the things that we would do socially is I would go over to his house and hang out. And he was more open-minded when it came to movies than anyone else I knew. So I didn't really get into like international films or even like films that weren't sort of schlocky 80s horror movies until nearly like the year 2000, like right as I was finishing up high school. And it's because of this guy that, you know, we would just sort of randomly go to the video store and pick things off the shelf based on what the cover looked like. So I first saw like Evil Dead 2 because of this guy. I saw Brain Dead because of this guy. And then I also ended up getting my introduction into anime because of him. And it wasn't this title. It was actually Ninja Scroll, which also features a healthy dose of rape. So, folks, that is your content warning for this episode. Thankfully, it's not tentacle rape like Ninja Scroll. But barring that weirdness, it was enough to get me interested to seek out some other anime titles. So because of that, I checked out like Akira. And when I was doing sort of preliminary research, like, oh, what should stupid white boys from the suburbs go and check out if they're interested in anime? This was one of those titles that would come up. And I was like, I've never heard of this. I don't know what it's about. And funnily enough, it actually represents all of my interests, right? It's a teen girl storyline. It's got doppelgängers, and it's basically an erotic thriller in disguise.
Jenny?
Well, the first time I think I watched it, because the second time I logged it clearly was not the first time, was I watched it around the same time I watched Paprika, which is Satoshi Kon's other film, one of his other popular films. He has a few, but passed away prematurely. Very sad.
Oh, shit.
And yeah, I remember hearing about this movie through the grapevine. I mentioned it like prior to recording, but Darren Aronofsky had purchased the rights to this movie, and there's a lot of snarky people that are like, well, Requiem for a Dream and Black Swan are basically Perfect Blue, yada yada. So Perfect Blue had been on my radar for a really long time. A lot of people in my Japanese classes had loved it. So I vaguely think in my early 20s, probably 2013 is when I first watched it at home, because I remember watching it in my old house on my little TV and kind of being blown away. And then I didn't revisit it until much later in my 20s. And I think it's just a really exquisite work of art and quite a great thriller.
Yeah, and it holds up, too. That's the exciting thing. I was really trepidatious because I feel like I've been a big blowhard for this movie, like telling people it's such a fantastic film. And you know how sometimes when you see those films at certain points in your life and then you go back and revisit it and you realize, oh shit, maybe I was blowing smoke up people's asses. But not in this case. This movie 100% holds up.
Yeah, I honestly, I know it's not really a slasher film, but there is slashing that gets done in this movie. I didn't know this was a horror film. I thought this was like a sci-fi movie, which is really on me for not doing the work. But yeah, so, okay. Let's go into this, though. So Perfect Blue was Satoshi Kon's first directorial effort, and it all started with a man named Masao Murayama. He is the co-founder of the Japanese animation studio Madhouse, and he appreciated Kon's work on the OVA JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. And OVA stands for Original Video Animation, and it's a term used to describe Japanese animated films and series made specifically for release in home video formats without prior showings on TV or in theaters. They were originally made available on VHS, then moving to Laserdisc and DVD. But starting in 2008, the term OAD, which is Original Animation DVD, began to refer to DVD releases published bundled with their source material manga. Maruyama contacted Kon to ask if he would be interested in directing an OVA adaptation of Yoshikazu Takeuchi's novel Perfect Blue, Complete Metamorphosis in the fall of 1994. Now, have either one of y'all actually read the source material for this?
I have not.
No, I have not either.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go into a couple of the differences in a bit. So, Takeuchi allegedly first planned a live-action film based on this novel, but due to funding difficulties, it was downgraded to direct-to-video and then direct-to-video animation.
Rude.
Well, I was trying to think. I was like, I guess... because, in the States, we have direct-to-video, and it's kind of, used to be looked down on as less than if it didn't go to theaters. And I was a little surprised to see that Japan had the same kind of hierarchy almost of media releases.
Yeah, I wonder if that was a specific time too, right? Right when that market was sort of starting to become financially viable, they were like, okay, well, we can maybe make quick bucks by just doing things either direct-to-video or direct-to-video anime. It's funny, I don't associate animated fare with cheaper because it seems so time laborious to me.
Yeah.
I do want to add that video was a big moneymaker in Japan throughout the 90s.
Yeah.
And that was, I would argue bigger than America. It was huge. And there's a lot of original direct-to-video films from a lot of very popular directors because they would just agree to make these movies for a quick budget, or small budget, quick time frame to make a ton of money. It was just
right
off the chain.
Well, I guess that's what I meant. Sorry, not necessarily that we had, theater, direct-to-video, whatever, but that it was considered a downgrade, Because, yeah, this seems to be the bread and butter of a lot of Japanese cinema.
I wouldn't call it a downgrade. I would just use the word cheaper, because it was just cheaper to make suddenly if they were making it direct-to-video. But I wouldn't call it a quality downgrade, per se.
Right. Got it. Well, so when Kon received the initial offer, it was for an OVA, again, original video animation. So he made Perfect Blue as just that. But then it was decided to be released as a movie in a hurry just before its completion. So this work was originally made as video animation for the narrow market, so it was expected to disappear as soon as a few people talked about it, because it was boom, 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 we got to churn out all more stuff. So here's Perfect Blue, we're going on, moving on. The fact that such a work was treated as a film, invited to many film festivals around the world, and it got it to be released as a package in many countries, that was a bit unexpected for all those involved, because that was not the intent behind the making of this film. Especially because psychological horror was not a mainstream genre in Japanese animation, and there was no precedent for it at the time. So normally something like this would have just been flat out rejected. So I don't know what was going on at the time to make this last minute decision to be like, oh wait, no, we need to make this better, or I guess more expensive.
I wonder if it was just the quality. Like, they recognized what they had.
I don't know, but as this was going on, like, no one thought it was going to be a hit. So I don't know. But by the time Kon was offered the job, the title Perfect Blue and the content, which is a story about a B-class idol and a perverted fan, had already been set. But Kon hadn't read the original novel and only read the script for the film, which was said to be, well, he was told was as close to the original as it could have been. But in the original source material, there is no TV show within a movie, so there's no procedural that we're kind of getting the dual plot lines for. Nor is there a motif of the blurring the boundary between dream and reality. The first plot was a simple splatter/psycho horror story about an idol girl that's attacked by a perverted fan who cannot tolerate her image change, and there were a lot of depictions of bleeding. Well, the issue here, Kon doesn't like horror. He doesn't like blood and guts. He actually, I guess it's a good thing he didn't read the novel first, because he probably would have said no to this type of adaptation. But Kon said that if he were free to make a plan about this, he never would have thought of such a setting because he thought the horror genre was overused, having already been dealt with in various works such as Seven, Basic Instinct, and Silence of the Lambs, and he believed that this was something that anime was not good at conveying. But again, I don't know if that's his actual opinion or if it's just a personal bias.
Right.
Since most of the works in that genre pursue how perverted or crazy the murderers are, Kon decided to focus on how the inner world of the protagonist, the victim, is broken by being targeted by the stalker in order to outsmart the audience. But on the other hand, the TV show within the movie, which is called Double Blind, is more like a parody than a straight psycho horror film, and he made that with the intention of criticizing Japanese TV dramas that are easily made by imitating Hollywood fads immediately.
Yeah, that's interesting because they really go into it. Like, when you see the double blind sequences, you're kind of like, oh, we've seen this a million times before.
Yeah. But I mean, I would almost view it more as almost more of a satire than a parody, right? Because parody, I feel like we're taking specific scenes from specific properties. Although, we get some lady skin suit shit in here, so maybe they are kind of parodying Silence of the Lambs.
I mean, I wouldn't use either of those words because that implies comedy, and I don't find that Perfect Blue is intentionally funny at all. I would say that it is commentary.
Right. Yeah. Well, still, Perfect Blue can essentially be described as a psychological horror film, but nevertheless, Kon decided to come aboard because he couldn't resist the allure of directing for the first time. And the author of the original work allowed him to change the story as much as he wanted, as long as he kept 3 things in mind to make the film work. And that was just, the main character is a B-grade idol, she has a rabid fan/stalker, and it is, at its core, still a horror film. That's it. He could have done anything else with this movie that he wanted.
So, that's a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah. So he took some elements from the original work, such as the uniquely Japanese existence of idols, which, okay, Jenny, what? Are idols a uniquely Japanese thing?
Yes, in the way that this film is, it is completely unique and different than a pop star in America, per se. They have, when they say B-grade idol, a lot of supergroups, will go and tour around Japan, and they'll have, smaller fan bases, but still be minorly successful. And you don't get that as often in America. With the pop sphere. It's similar, but very different. Kind of think of it more as a machine, like an insane machine in Japan. South Korea does the same thing. And they mirrored their industry off of Japan's, actually. So it's more of it's a mecha industry that is still unbroken or unbreakable. Whereas in the music industry in America, the pop star industry in America, it's more broken. But also I would say that a Japanese idol can do more than just singing and dancing. They tend to be a model as well, or an actress. And this film kind of dives into a lot of the aspects of that and how they kind of flow between basically just pop culture stardom.
Mm-hmm. In my research, what seemed to come around too is like, it's not even necessarily about talent. It's about like grooming a person to be a perfect specimen for consumption by the masses. Like, I found some slightly, I don't want to say derogatory, but it seems slightly dismissive North American reviews of people being like, they don't even have to have that much talent, because the way that they're packaged and promoted and then trotted out, they become this kind of insatiable product for consumers to eat up, and it just feeds the fad.
Well, it almost, I mean, you tell me if I'm off base here, but it almost kind of sounds like the old Hollywood system where we would have, studios that quote unquote owned actors and actresses and would like contract them to their films and kind of treat them as property.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
Well, I think it's like that, but also like you were saying, Jenny, it's like they're a jack of all trades. So it's not like we're just getting an actor or a singer. It's like these people will be able to do whatever you need them to do.
And they usually introduce them through music, and then they tend to grow in other areas, whether it be TV, whether it be film, whether it be modeling, whether it just be like general stardom.
So what you're saying is Mamania should have been prepared for Mima to go off and do other things.
But that's also the thing, is that fans are still crazy and they don't like when people deviate or change, because people have, and that's what the film at its core is kind of saying, is that all of these fans think that they own their pop idol and can dictate what they do.
Yeah.
And especially women.
Yes.
Well, okay, so the idols was a big thing they wanted to keep. The otaku fans that surround them, and the stalkers that have become more radical and came up with as many ideas as possible with scriptwriter Sadayuki Murai, with the intention of using them to create a completely new story. And rewinding a bit to otaku. So again, Joe, you mentioned this off the top, and I just mentioned it again. This was not a term that I was familiar with. So, as you both know, this is a Japanese word that describes people with consuming interests, particularly in anime, manga, video games, or computers. But the interesting thing that I found out was it may also be used as a pejorative term, with its negativity stemming from a stereotypical view of otaku as social outcasts and the media's reporting on one Tsutomu Miyazaki, who is dubbed the otaku murderer in 1989. He was a serial killer, basically. But the term is less offensive today, but around the time Perfect Blue came out, it was still a bit dicey of its usage.
I mean, it strikes me, and Jenny, correct me if I'm off base with this, but it feels like the way we use the word incel in North America now.
Oh, that's very interesting.
It's not quite like these people feel like they deserve sex, which is the kind of primary definition of an incel, but the visual image that we associate with the two terms, where it's like withdrawn boys who are not as socially equipped to handle interactions with women, but feel like they have a sense of ownership over them.
I think that's what it used to kind of be, a similar term, but I think now it's more socially acceptable.
Right.
It's like a stan.
Yeah, actually, yeah. So it turned from kind of, I think what Joe was saying, incel, but then it kind of morphed into stan. It's a very good example of how slang terms change over time.
Right.
Well, the film still needed a core motif, so Kon came up with the motif of two things that should have a borderline, such as dream and reality, memory and fact, and oneself and others, becoming borderless and blending together. And if that sounded like word salad to y'all, yes, it is. In the meantime, and try to follow me on this, Kon came up with the idea that Mima's idol character is quote-unquote the past me, and this quote-unquote other me that should have existed only on the internet has materialized due to external factors, the consciousness of the fans who want the protagonist to be a certain way, and internal factors, the protagonist's regret that she might have been more comfortable as her past self, and we will be diving into that a lot more once we get into the plot. But then the composition that the character and the protagonist herself confronted emerged. So once he had that idea down, it was only then that he became convinced that this work could be established as his own video work. So he decided to interpret the original story above as a story about an idol girl who broke down by a sudden change in her environment with the addition of that stalker. But he wrote a completely new script with Mirai. And initially, Mirai wrote the first draft of the script, and Kon would add or remove ideas from it as they were kind of going through it. They spent a lot of time discussing it. Many of the ideas came out of that. But then Kon wrote all the storyboards, where he also made changes to dialogue and other elements. The drawing work was also carried out in parallel while they were doing this, which seems like a time saver, but also counterproductive if they decided to change things.
Trace, do you have a sense of what the timeline looks like? Like, how long did all of this take them?
I mean, if the beginning of this production history was in 1994, and the film would eventually have its world premiere at Fantasia in 97. So, I mean, it's within a 3-year time gap.
Wow. Okay. That seems speedy.
Yeah. When you think about it, though, as Jenny said, this was meant to be, the video format, which would have been speedy. It just became the theatrically released film in the last minute.
Yeah.
So the company that purchased the videogram and television rights to Perfect Blue before it was completed advised the distributor to submit the film to Fantasia in Montreal, Canada, so that it could be released overseas first and gain word of mouth. Since this was his first film, Kon was still unknown, so the distributor introduced the film as the first directorial effort of a disciple of Katsuhiro Otomo, the creator of Akira. Instead of just naming him.
Rude.
And Otomo was actually credited as a planning collaborator, although he never had any direct involvement with the film. There's a rumor that someone talked to him about it, and he said like one word or one piece of advice about it, and that was enough to get his credit on here.
Oh, gosh.
That sounds like Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yes. Or Wes Craven Presents Anything. So, Perfect Blue did screen at the Fantasia International Film Festival on August 5th, 1997, and it was so well received that a second screening was hurriedly arranged for those who could not see it, and it was eventually voted by the audience as the best international film that year. So, thanks to that, the distributor began to receive invitations from more than 50 film festivals, including festivals in Germany, Sweden, Australia, and South Korea. They began negotiations with distributors in various European countries, and eventually succeeded in selling the film in major markets like Spain, France, Italy, Britain, and Germany, prior to its release in Japan.
Wow. They just really waited until the end to bring it home.
Yep, and of course, we have the whole Darren Aronofsky thing, but he said in a magazine in 2001 that he had to abandon the purchase of the rights, but he had worked in an homage to Perfect Blue in his film Requiem for a Dream. I think the big one's the bathtub shot, which is there, but he has apparently sprinkled in many more visual homages in that film and possibly others of his films.
I mean, the ongoing battle is that Black Swan is basically a remake of Perfect Blue, and even though he lost the rights, and it is at its core a different story, and obviously adapted from the ballet as well. It's very touchy among Perfect Blue fans.
Right.
Well, he denies it. He says,
of course he does, because legally he has to.
Because he'd have to pay for it if he didn't.
I mean, there's no killer in Black Swan.
Oh,
Trace. Come on,
man.
I'm just, it's not a one-to-one I see the influence. Like, obviously you have like the themes I think are there, they carry over, but like the plot itself is not the exact same thing.
I mean, there are articles written a year ago that still are like, oh, let's list everything that is similar between Perfect Blue and Black Swan, and screenshot by screenshot, and it's just sus. It's very sus that to me, and I like Black Swan a lot, and I don't think it discredits the movie at all, actually. I just think it's like, Aronofsky, I know you legally can't say it, but man.
Right. It's more like, come on, dude,
convenient
fess
that
up.
he's passed away and can't say that's my movie.
That whenever Aronofsky dies, he's gonna leave a note. It's what is it called? Like when you set an email to send, like after you die, it's gonna like just send a mass press release to everyone. It's like, hey, by the way, Black Swan was Perfect Blue, suckers.
Oh, gosh.
But yeah, anyway, so Perfect Blue had its general release in Japan on February 28th, 1998, and a live-action film adaptation was actually made and released in 2002, but from everything I've read about it, apparently it's really bad.
Jenny, have you seen that one?
No. I've also read that it's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's called Perfect Blue Yume Nara Samate. God, I hope I didn't butcher that. But I don't think it got an American release, probably because it was so bad.
Actually, there's a lot of reasons why Japanese movies do not get American releases, and usually it has to do with the distributor.
Oh, well, there you go. I couldn't find the distributor's name for Perfect Blue, so everything I'm reading is like, the distributor did this, the distributor did that, but they wouldn't name the distributor.
It's probably because they don't exist anymore.
Oh my God.
Entirely possible.
The perils of international films, right?
Well, luckily, critical response was positive. We've got an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes with an average score of 7.2 out of 10. We got a 67 out of 100 on Metacritic, but Letterboxd users, bless them, have awarded it an 8.8 out of 10, which is probably one of the highest Letterboxd scores we've had. Yeah. It's gotten a bunch of awards and accolades, and I could list them out, but the one that stuck out to me the most was that Slash Film named this the scariest animated film ever. Which I think, if you have not seen this yet, I would not hold on to that.
Wait, you...
What?
Sorry, if you have not seen this, I wouldn't walk into it with that in mind, because I think if you walk in thinking it's going to be the scariest animated film you've ever seen, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah. I haven't seen enough horror anime to know how this ranks. I mean, I think this is a great psychological thriller, but yeah, if you go in expecting a slash and dash or something, it's probably not going to meet your expectations.
Yeah, that's what I would say. But anyway, that's it. That's Perfect Blue. So, what's it about, Joe?
All right, so I'm going to be drawing on a master's thesis from Melanie Saint-Oyant called Queering Animation, the Animated Aesthetics of Queerness in the Works of Satoshi Kon. So keep an ear out for her as we go along. But we begin at an underwhelming live performance by a Power Rangers-esque group. And it's partially underwhelming because they just don't have a lot of energy, but mostly because everyone in the crowd, which is entirely composed of men, is waiting for the teen girl pop group Cham to come on stage. So this performance is intercut with a discussion of main girl Mima, who is voiced by Junko Iwa, and they're talking about her potential as an actress. So they're thinking about turning her into an idol. And then almost immediately, this fight erupts in the crowd because Mima is announcing her departure from the group, but also there's a group of people in the crowd who aren't taking the performance seriously. Like, they're there just to throw shit at the girls on stage.
This is wild, too. This is a rambunctious audience. Yeah. Although I will say, though, I love the song that Cham plays. I think this is a really fun pop song.
Oh, sure. I mean, there's a reason they make it on the charts, Trace.
What, 85th, right?
But they've never been on the charts before.
Are you a big K-pop fan, Jenny?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know why I even asked.
No hesitation.
I guess this isn't K-pop. I guess it's J-pop, but sorry.
I also used to be a huge J-pop fan, but I with K-pop as well, I tend to not get into the new stuff as often, and I think I get into more of newer K-pop bands than I ever do with newer J-pop bands. I like a lot of Japanese indie music a lot more.
Interesting. I could not tell you like the distinction between the two, but that is fascinating.
Do you know, Jenny? Is there a distinction between J-pop and K-pop?
I mean, yes, one is in Korea and the other one's in Japan.
I guess I meant more so in the style of music. Like why do you gravitate more towards K-pop than you do J-pop?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I think K-pop took exactly what J-pop was doing and has just perfected it. Like, to an insane degree, where I think that the product they come out with more often is more, honestly, well done these days.
Okay.
And I think that a lot of the old J-pop stars are, I think they're very good, and they paved the way for a lot of, like, K-pop stardom. But I think that at the end of the day, the K-pop machine is just more insane than the J-pop machine now.
Interesting. Okay. I love it when the up-and-comer usurps the original.
Ah.
I will say, I think that this is a bit of a confronting opening sequence because you are just thrown into this. Like, we don't know who the main character is. We don't know that we're supposed to care for Mima. We don't know if these boys are going to be the primary antagonists. It's just like, hey, you're at a live show. Enjoy the music. So she does eventually sing a farewell song, and this is observed by a differently drawn character. He's got sort of hooded eyes. He looks more withdrawn. He looks more menacing right from the jump.
Oh yeah, his face is nasty looking.
It's frankly scary. Yeah.
Y'all are gonna laugh. There's because I've mentioned the Chipmunk Adventure on this podcast before, but there's the male villain in that movie has this man's face. It is bizarre. And granted, Chipmunk Adventure came out 10 years before, and I checked to be like, oh, is it the same animation company? No, they just look very similar.
I wonder if it's a visual shortcut to kind of be like, hey, people will immediately recognize that this is a villain. Like, we just have to draw them in a particular way, and that will connote this person is untrustworthy, this person's going to do bad things.
Maybe. Yeah, like a stock character outline for male villains.
Right, yeah.
I mean, want to talk about incels? His face, like, poster child incel face when I think about it anyway.
Yeah.
It's just really, it's unsettling, and it looks completely distinct from nearly every other character we're going to see, even though you could argue there are no good men in this movie.
His eyes, though, like, does he even have irises and pupils? I feel like his eyes are always just like a white.
No.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And that really adds to the creep factor of this character.
Mm-hmm. So this character is Mamania, who I don't even know that we really ever name him so much as we just discover it over the course of the film. And he is voiced by Masaki Okura. So he's watching this performance and he's all eyes on Mima. And while this is all happening, we're also transitioning, or we're intercutting between scenes of her like taking the train ride home, going to her cramped apartment. And it's really interesting because it recontextualizes the film. Like, this isn't about an idol. This is about a girl who is also an idol. So we're really focusing on this interiority of her life and the sort of push-pull between her two worlds.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a really good way of saying it, because I think that that's also how you kind of realize that she is a girl who wants to be the best idol she can be and the most popular idol. And that's why she goes down this really horrible journey and says yes to a lot of things she doesn't want to do, which you'll get into, because she wants to be more popular and more successful at the end of the day.
Right. What's interesting is that we almost never really hear her say that. Like, we hear other people decide that for her, and she goes along with it, because I think you're right, Jenny. It's like we infer it's what she actually wants, or that she's willing to accept the advice of others who will take her that way. But it's weird that the film never has her verbalize it. If anything, there's a specific line when she says, like, well, of course I didn't want to do it, but I felt like I had to.
I mean, that could also be a critique on the machine of it all, where she was probably picked when she was very young, probably like high school level, definitely teenager, and then they groomed her into this person that they want her to be. And I think you see that also in the TV show, which you'll get into, where I'm sure she was also picked up on the street.
Yeah, it's interesting. So Mima opens her fan mail when she gets home, and we'll address what she discovers in the mail in a little bit. But she's also fielding a phone call from her unsupportive mother, who is unhappy with her decision to transition away from music and into more of that traditional sort of acting, versatile kind of roles. So she draws a bath, and then she gets a fax, because we're in the 90s.
Yes!
Love it.
So good.
Getting a fax.
Yeah. And of course, we just hold on it as this page comes through the fax, right? And it's just the word traitor written a bunch of times. And the threatening handwriting is very clear. And you're just like, oh, okay. Well, this is why celebrities do not give out their personal numbers.
God. It's worse today.
Right. Yeah. So as she's looking at this fact, she says the words, "Who are you?" which is a sort of repeated refrain throughout the film. And the camera like pulls back into this gorgeous, extreme long shot of her isolated in the city in this small, cramped little apartment. And it just keeps repeating. And you're like, ooh, twisty. Okay, the mystery has begun. And then the line repeats. And it turns out, oh, this is just her single line of dialogue from the set of this somewhat trashy-looking psycho thriller Double Bind.
I could not believe it. Like, she's gonna go and be an actress. I'm like, okay, cool. She's like a lead role in something. No. She's a glorified extra. I mean, like, I guess she gets her, well, not SAG card because it's Japan, but like, she gets one spoken line. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, that's a risk for your career, lady.
Yeah. It doesn't even seem like they knew if she had the capacity to act. And kind of like what you were saying, Jenny, it almost seems like it doesn't matter, right? They would have just made it work and she would have transitioned into it regardless. But this does seem like a big risk.
I mean, yeah, it is a big risk, but it's all part of the machine.
Well, but I guess, okay, so yeah, so we have this machine, like, I'm calling it a business, even though it's always a business. But it's like, if she would not have been successful in her acting career, is it not possible for her just to go back to Cham?
Okay, that's actually a very good and layered question.
Okay.
Do people ever come back? Yeah.
Sometimes, but sometimes they don't, because once they leave, the fans get mad and even more mad when they come back, because then they've essentially failed at whatever they're trying to do and they feel more entitled, more correct, that they should have never left. And then it's like this like weird circle of toxic fandom that a lot of like both J-pop and K-pop have equally. It's pretty disgusting, some of the fans that they have. I mean, but that happens with anything.
Yeah.
Look at sports.
It's so funny, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of North American reviews of this movie that I think try to recontextualize it. Like, the people who know what was going on in Japan are very familiar. Like, this feels quintessentially mid-90s Japan, like what was happening with their idol scene, but even just like consumerism in general, like people as commodities, and they were fads, and we would do image change and we would just sell them and brand them and people would gobble it up. And then you see people in North America being like, oh, wow, this feels so reminiscent of like what happened with Destiny's Child and how, you know, Beyonce went off on her own and people just wouldn't forgive her for the way she treated the others. And you're just like, no, like I can see the comparisons, but this is also very culturally distinct.
Yeah, I think that's how someone will contextualize something from what they understand. But there is a lot of cultural distinction. And I mean, but fandom across the globe, it's all the same. Like I mentioned sports is a really good example. Like if someone leaves a team and then comes back, people aren't happy when they come back because it's there's a toxicity to it where they're like, oh, well, you left us and we were mad and now you're back and we're even more mad.
Yeah, that sense of ownership, right?
God damn it.
It's double traitor.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you weren't successful there? Oh, now you want to come back? Kind of thing.
Joe, shortly after this is when they're talking about the plot of the police procedural. And this is when, is it Ari?
Ari, yeah.
Ari. She's talking about, in character while they're shooting, is talking about how the killer is skinning the victims and making a suit.
Right, yes. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in some ways, this doesn't seem like a bad fit for Mima. Like, she's not being asked to do too much. It looks, you know, from a North American perspective, I was like, oh, it's basically Law and Order SVU kind of equivalent. But it's lurid enough and trashy enough that it really works within this kind of psychodrama that Mima is going to find herself in. And I just love the fact that this show is called Double Bind, because it's like, could we get a little more meta with this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like the title of the show.
Like, I would watch Double Bind, the TV show. 100%.
I mean, yeah, I feel like if it was an American show, it would be on CBS. But yes, absolutely.
Sure. Maybe like a hard NBC at like 10 p.m. Okay, so we're also at this point introduced to Mima's manager, Rumi, who is voiced by Rika Matsumoto. And Trace, I believe you recognize this voice.
Oh, thank you for the cue, Joe. Everyone, this actress is the voice of Satoshi, aka Ash Ketchum, in the Japanese version of the Pokemon anime, and she has been the voice of Satoshi since the beginning of Pokemon.
The beginning of time.
Oh, man.
So Trace, I am curious, did you recognize her voice? Because I assume you watched the English version of Pokemon.
I don't watch the Japanese edit.
Oh, okay. I was curious. I was like, that would be really impressive to me, personally.
Unfortunately, I don't even know if the Japanese edits. So actually, that's a lie. I have watched a few Japanese episodes of Pokemon because they were banned in the States. And they were only released in Japan. So there's one where, like, there's someone points a gun at Ash Ketchum in the first season that couldn't come into the States. So they never even dubbed it. So you have to bootleg it online.
Pointing guns at Ash?
Yeah, they went to an island. It's really actually kind of funny because there is continuity in Pokemon. And in this particular episode, he catches 30 Tauros because it's at the safari park. And so this episode never aired. And all of a sudden, Ash has 30 Tauros. And also the continuity does last across all 20 years of the anime, so he still has those 30 Tauros that we never got to see in the States.
Wow.
But yes, sorry, same voice, and I thought that was very delightful.
Nice. Okay.
That is fun.
So Rumi tells Mima, basically she's involved in all aspects of her life. It seems like a very close mother-daughter kind of relationship, and Mima is interested in this fan letter that she has received because she doesn't understand what the hell Mima's room is. And because, once again, folks, this is the mid to late 90s, we are told, oh, it's an internet website. You just need to log on using a computer. And we get to watch the scene as Mima goes, oh, I thought this was going to be easy.
I love every time in the 90s and early 2000s people go on the internet, especially any Japanese movie that deals with the internet, because it is just very amusing to me. But also every English movie that deals with the internet. They're like HTTP.
Yeah, it is too funny.
She's really proud of herself, though.
Oh, sure. She should be. I mean, don't you two remember the first time you kind of went on the internet and realized, oh, wow, there's like this whole other weird world that just exists?
I did love the Apple logo that was featured prominently over all of this stuff.
Oh, I fucking had that computer. That was my family computer when I was growing up. It looked exactly like this one.
The Macintosh Performa?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I never even heard of it.
Old school, baby. Yes. I don't even know. Yeah, I think ours could get on the internet. It was dial-up slow as fuck. But it's like you had to have it plugged into the internet because wireless internet was not a thing.
Honestly, it is such a chore to remember what we did back then to get on the internet. She's right. It is hard.
It is hard.
It takes a long time.
Like, she doesn't even know how to navigate properly, right?
It just really made it hard when you were a kid. Well, when you discovered porn as a kid, and so you would, like, as a kid, oh my God, as a teenager, and you would go, like, sneak into the family computer at night, but oh no, you can't do that because the fucking dial-up sound woke up the entire family.
Trace, is this a personal experience?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Jenny, it's a universal experience. Get on the train.
Because bear in mind, I'm not just watching porn, I'm watching gay porn before I'm out. So it's really like, I'm like, oh my God, I was really good at clearing all the history, closing all the windows.
Oh, see, I did not know how to clear the history, but also it was the sweatiest enterprise because you were just sweating bullets. Like, how long do I have? This image needs to download faster in case someone comes around the corner or comes down the stairs and they're going to get a clear glimpse of what is on this screen right now. Double bind.
I could never log into the internet with my parents asleep. They would have yelled at me.
Yes.
So I just didn't try. I was like, oh no. Because the computer was right by their bedroom. There was no way.
See, yeah, mine was upstairs, but it was like on like, it was like open, like right by the banister that led to just the living room downstairs. So it would like echo throughout the entire house.
Oh,
of course. That's how they got you. Anyway. Internet aside.
Internet aside. So what Mima discovers is when she navigates to this website, Mima's room, she discovers that it's an entire website dedicated to her, but it includes weird things like a diary. And the diary is written first person, and it is beat for beat what she does during the day. Like someone has very close access to her, has been following her, aka has been stalking her.
Yeah, they even know which foot she used to, like, get off the train.
That is wild. The just minute observations that this person has of every little thing she does is really scary.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like, because we did just see her doing this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, this movie loves to do repetition. So it's like, if you're paying attention, you will see the same things happening. And you realize, oh, is it just because she's in this machine, in this rut, right? Where people could follow her every move, or they would be able to find out where she was going to be and what she was going to be doing. But also it's because someone is so close to her that they can see all of this happening.
Well, and that's the thing. So, I mean, like, I know I just said earlier, this isn't like the scariest animated film ever, whatever. But what makes this so scary to me, because we've seen stalkers, like, you know, reach out to their victims and, like, you know, say, oh, I saw you doing this. But it's another thing to have them pretend to be you and posting your day-to-day activities on a website, acting as if you made it.
Right.
Whoa.
Especially as you start to lose your own mental faculties. Like the scene where she says, oh, I guess I was at that show, because she herself can't remember, but the diary says so. She's like, whoa, okay. Okay, so she goes back to mentally preparing her single line of dialogue for Double Bind, and her vision is distorting a little bit. Like she's upset, she's starting to come undone. So just as she's about to film, a letter bomb that is addressed to her explodes in the face of her agent, Mr. Tadakoro, and he is voiced by Shinpachi Tsuji. I love Japanese films.
You're like, no one's questioning that, and I'm going to move on.
Yep, we're just going to keep going. Okay. So at home, Rumi reassures Mima that this explosion is just a prank. And we could almost believe it because that opening scene showed that there are people who think that she's a joke. They don't take her seriously. They don't really care about her as an artist. So you think, yeah, if somebody didn't like her, didn't take her seriously, they might do something petty like this. And it's not as though he died. So it's kind of okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. So this is actually when we do get more information about Mima's room and the diary entries and that kind of stuff. So we're really getting a sense, okay, somebody is stalking her, and we just keep repeating her line as she prepares for the show.
She's trying real hard to nail every bit of this line.
Well, she's got to sell it, right? It's the only line she has. And for now, this is her entire career.
Yep.
It's on the line.
Yep.
On the line, get it?
We got it. So there's a throwaway line that Rumi herself is a former pop idol, and she questions whether or not all of this work is worth it. Like, wouldn't it have just been easier to keep Mima as a pop idol instead of trying to transition her over into acting? So you very much get a sense that Rumi maybe wasn't on board with this career decision, or it's not one that she herself made, because obviously she ended up becoming an agent to a pop idol.
Yeah.
We also learn that Cham is doing quite well without Mima. So they're on the charts for the first time, and some of her fans don't seem to have a very high esteem of Double Bind as a TV show. So there's a lot of questions about whether or not she made the right decision.
See, okay, I actually thought this was a flashback to them charting when she was there, and she was using it as like I was successful when I was there, but that actually makes more sense than what you're saying.
Happens so often where someone leaves and like the fans of her are gonna be like, oh well, that won't do as well without her, and then they somehow do better and they keep going, and it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're in it. It just matters if your song is catchy enough.
Well, maybe it's like a personal vendetta. They're like, hey, everyone, let's make them really popular after she leaves to make her feel really shitty about leaving the band. No, it's...
Maybe not. So I did want to elaborate a little bit. I introduced another term off the top called kawaii, and that is part of the idol culture. So this refers to performers who are basically made to maintain a certain idealized hyperfeminine image of innocence. And the direct translation...
It's cute.
Yes, it means pitiful and cute. And the example that I read was Hello Kitty, because she can't walk, she can't talk, and she needs to be taken care of, but she's extremely cute.
Okay, that's interesting. Most people just use it for cute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had never seen the pitiful before, because I was like,
that's interesting.
There's a connotation to that.
I mean, like baby.
Right.
I would say like maybe like baby and cute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so at the end of the day, part of this is like, this is what Mima is expected to adhere to, and if she steps out of that line by, say, doing some more provocative things later on in the film, people are far more likely to turn against her because she's not adhering to these codes that people have created artificially for her.
Yes, because as we know, in all culture, women have to be sexy but sexless. They can't have sex, and if they start having sex, they're no longer interesting to a certain type of person.
That is so... I mean, you're right. Like that has been the cultural mindset for so long, but it's so fucked.
Yeah,
It really is.
I saw a piece from former guest Princess Weeks on the Mary Sue talking about how when she watched this film, she immediately thought about the kind of transition from child celebrity on like the Disney Channel into pop princess of like Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, Miley Cyrus, and so on. And just like how they have to rebel, but also we want them to be sexy and we give them all this attention, but then we also call them sluts and whores, and, you know, they're biting the hand that fed them by going against Disney and other corporations and so on. And I was like, okay, that to me tracks a little bit more closely.
Mm-hmm.
I think Disney is actually a very good one-to-one comparison for J-pop almost. Like the Disney machine.
Right.
And the way that they pick up people at malls. It's pretty similar.
Just like, if it was a single person and not a corporate entity, it's like, I went to the mall and I found a young girl so that I could turn her into something that I wanted. You're like, no, that actually makes you a pedophile.
Oh. Yeah. Ew.
Okay, so Mima is thinking about all of this pressure, and also she's still thinking about these diary entries, which are very unnerving. She ends up having a panic attack as she's getting off the train because she realizes she's using the exact same foot that she read about on the internet. And she's also dodging paparazzi who want to take her picture. And when she gets into the elevator, she sees that there's a newspaper blurb about one of the guys who heckled her at that opening show who has been hit by a car. And it's just randomly in the elevator, as though this person knew where she was going to be and wanted to be like, hey, I took care of somebody for you.
Creepy.
So in Rumi's office, Mima overhears that Cham is doing really well, and they're in this other room celebrating their success, and you think, shit, she has made the wrong decision. Right. But then she also learns, the agent and the manager are going to fight for her to get more screen time on Doublevine, so she's doing okay. It's just her celebration is not in sync with what's happening with Cham anymore.
Right.
So she gets harassed on the street by someone who proposes that she model. So, Jenny, that was helpful information to know that this actually would be considered part of the traditional idol trajectory. But this dude is creepy, and we don't like him. But this is actually just another double-bind scene, because the movie loves to fucking play with what we're seeing and reveal it to be, nope, this is artificial, this is manufactured, this is not real. So this one always works for me. I always forget about it, and I'm like, right, okay, yep, this is all part of what she's doing on the show.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Of course, she is also being simultaneously videotaped by Melania, who is in the crowd doing that super stalkery, creepy shit.
It's very Peeping Tom almost too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring back Saint-Oyant for this. So part of her reading of this movie and Kon's kind of whole oeuvre is that he's fond of queering up traditional spaces. And in this case, we're actually talking about like queer as non-normative or different from traditional. So Saint-Oyant says, if we understand conventional codes and normative structures as being coherent or in line, then we can argue that Kon uses incoherence or disorientation as an artistic strategy to queer and critique the subjects of his films. So queerness in this sense relies on play and transformation. To be queer is to live in these threshold spaces, hidden or unseen, part of multiple ways of being, and Kon's strategic use of disorientation in this film acts as a critique against heteronormative gender expectations and repressive gender roles in cinema and entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, Paprika is very, I would say that's fairly spot on.
Jenny, would you say that, is he a filmmaker who's interested in female celebrity and stardom?
Yes. I mean, Paprika doesn't deal with stardom, though, if I remember that correctly. I think it's just a normal woman who's going to therapy because she has, like, these dream episodes where she can enter into... It's basically Inception.
Oh,
okay. Because Inception, that's another thing, is Inception stole everything from Paprika. The Kon's fans, they do the most. The biggest thing is, I think Tokyo Godfathers doesn't really play with that kind of format that both Paprika, Perfect Blue, and it's been forever since I've seen Millennium Actress, so I can't really comment on that one, because I also don't like that one as much as the other three.
Yeah, I've heard it's not as popular.
He has a little bit of a trippy mindset, and definitely plays with the editing process, which is why a lot of film directors really admire him, and why I think Nolan even mentioned at one point that Paprika, he has seen it. He's very familiar with it, obviously, because he steals stuff from it.
But at the same time, I never find this movie to be confusing, because again, when you eventually every scene that's playing in the double bind, like it will reveal itself as just that. So you're only going to be maybe confused or thinking you're watching the actual plot of the film for a few seconds, really, before the movie shows its hand.
Yeah. I agree with both of those points. It's like double bind will reveal itself in time, and if anything, you're just meant to see, it's like the difference between her fake acting life and her real life is really starting to blur and collapse. But also, it's such a fun, intuitive, cinematic technique. Like, this film really does feel... It sounds stupid, but it feels less animated and almost more real life, because I think it's edited and shot in the ways that we're used to in live action films.
Well, and that's why, look, by all accounts, that live action version is not a good movie, but I really am curious about it because I want to see how they chose. Well, and actually that's the other thing too. If it's an adaptation of the original source material and not an adaptation of this movie, it's going to be very different.
Yeah, because I love the narrative decisions that they made for this animated film. Like, I can't imagine a different version of this story because I think this story works so well.
Yeah, and I actually, although you guys say that, I think that the only way this movie could be successful in the way that he is telling it is in animated form.
Why do you say that?
For multiple reasons, but I think the flowiness of it and the dreamlike quality, I think, lends to animation a lot more than it does to live action. I mean, I mentioned Inception earlier. I think that's one of the very few movies that, like, brings the dreamlike quality to a live action film and actually makes it feel like a dream.
Oh, see, now I'm like racking my brain for movies that have like really, really, really good like dream worlds outside of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nightmare on Elm Street's really good, but it also is distinct. I think it's a little bit more distinct in when it's a dream, and it's not as like Perfect Blue. It's almost hard to like decipher, especially towards the end.
The movie tips its hand, as you said, Trace, but I think it's only because otherwise we wouldn't know. Like, all the double bind sequences get me because there's no visual difference between her real life and what we see of the show until we see the cameras, or they call cut, or she flubs a line or something like that.
And the editing is just so smooth.
It's so good.
Yes.
Yeah, that it's like you just can't tell. Like, you're like, oh yeah, this has to be real life, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, it's not shit.
Mm-hmm.
Again, got me again.
Got me
Even
again.
though, like, a movie, A Nightmare, you kind of understand the tricks after a while.
Right.
And they also want you to know the tricks.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't.
Well,
He
but
doesn't.
when Joe and I were talking earlier today, because I was like, yeah, this movie reminds me of a lot of different films, but I was like, it's not Lynchian. But then Joe, you brought up Mulholland Drive, and even though that came out after this movie, I can see a lot of similarities in the way that each of these films like progress in their narrative and how they relay the narrative.
Yeah, the dream logic
Yeah.
in both those films it's so difficult to distinguish between, but it's purposely by design, right? And I think you both hit on something that is distinct. Like a lot of films that use dreams want you to know that they're dreams. And it's just like, ooh, the dream is so scary or weird or it's surreal. And you're like, okay, but that isn't selling the kind of confusion that we feel when we're caught in between like waking and sleeping. And
Well, and this is a me thing, but typically I'm not a fan of dream sequences or nightmare sequences. I understand. Usually the point is like we're literally getting in the character's head, seeing like what they are feeling and thinking and like what they're anxious about. I always, if it's not done well though, I just see it as wasted narrative. Like this is screen time that could be used to push along the narrative as opposed for this more of an introspective thing. This movie does it very well, I think.
yes. Yeah. So, as we've talked about, double bind is starting to become a larger part of Mima's life, and that's thanks to Tadakora and Rumi, because one of them has signed off on a controversial rape storyline that will give Mima quite a bit more screen time, and Rumi is not on board for
this isn't just a rape scene, this is a gang rape scene.
Yeah.
Which, I guess that's why we're throwing out the accused references in here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, folks, if you haven't watched this movie, once again, content warning, because this is not an easy rape scene to watch.
But it's not it's not a quote unquote real rape scene.
Oh, I disagree.
I mean,
I think that this is not a sexually penetrative rape scene, but I absolutely think that this is a rape scene.
Wait, Trace, are you saying it's not real in the context of the film, or you're saying it's not real, like it's animated and it's
no, in the
live
context of the
action?
film, it's not real. Because they are acting out a scene in the show.
But they imply that although she gave consent, she felt pressured into giving consent.
Yeah, it's rape of a different kind.
Okay, so it's the fact that she is having to simulate rape, even though it's against her consent, makes it a rape.
I mean, it's an assault or harassment or however you want. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It still affected her.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, we see that as she starts crying. I guess, sorry, I'm not trying to downplay the impact of this scene on Mima, but more so be like, this is a scene a rape scene that's being simulated / acted in a television show, as opposed to like Mima is dancing in a club and being raped by a bunch of men on the stage.
Right. But I think what Kon is actually trying to show here is that there is no difference between acting and reality. And even though the man right before the act says, I'm sorry, he still also grabs her and it's uncomfortable, and he doesn't ask her if it's okay to grab her in a certain way. Or, like, you don't know as a viewer, obviously, if what they said should be happening in that scene and what they practice, but it's still very uncomfortable to be in a scene and then be surprised by actions of men.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so much of this movie is about male gaze, right? Like, it's about how Mima is framed. Like, whenever we see her in crowd shots or when we see Mamania looking at her, it's often through the lens of binoculars or his camera. And in this scene in particular, like, the way that the rape scene is shot, we actually pause at one point so that they can reset. So we're keenly aware that this is a simulated, I'm using air quotes here, a simulated rape scene, because she's not actually being quote unquote hurt. She's not actually being raped. And yet the reaction that she has, the way that Rumi reacts where she actually starts crying and has to leave the room, the way that we as viewers feel is incredibly triggering. This is so authentic that it still feels like a rape.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it makes us complicit in it too, right? Like, because Kon does that pause so that they can do the reset. So like, we are aware this is not real, and yet it is also incredibly upsetting.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's also foreshadowing of a scene that happens towards the end and scenes that are perpetually happen throughout the film. A lot of movies break into this kind of treatment of women and the sexism of, show business in general. But I think that this one does it possibly the best. And I also think they do it in the safest way because it is animated.
So do you think that the animation, like, would you say it dilutes the impact then?
No, I think it makes it more impactful because I think that the fact that it is animated, you're not actually thinking about the actual actress in the scene, which I think a lot of people do when they watch these scenes in films and feel uncomfortable. And I think this is the best way to explore that type of misogyny and uncomfortable feeling without it being an unsafe production.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting too, like when people talk about particularly male-directed rape revenge films, and I know that this isn't necessarily that, like this is a psycho thriller with a strong male gaze and female simulated rape. Right. Boy, was that me just trying to put up context pieces all over the board. I don't see people criticizing Kon for this rape sequence or the way that it's filmed, despite the fact that the film is interrogating the male gaze. And I do think that part of that is the animation allows us some of that critical distance.
I mean, and I'm not going to say the scene is necessary, but I think that, I mean, again, this is, well, yes, it is necessary.
Yeah, I think it's necessary for this film. Yeah. Yes,
absolutely. I mean, again, like we are dealing with a woman who is gradually losing her mind, and this is kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? Like this is, yes.
Well, it's not just that, though. This isn't like, oh, this is the moment where her mind cracks. It's like, this is the most literal interpretation of all of the other things that are being done to her in the name of advancing her career by all of the people who are purportedly fans of hers or looking out for her.
Got it. Yeah. No, that much better put.
So we have also jumped over a very important moment, which is Mima's subway home after she kind of hears about this rape storyline coming to pass. You know, Rumi's like, we're not going to do it. This isn't right. And Mima's like, no, it's fine. You know, I think we should proceed with it. And then on the subway home, this is the first time she sees what I'm going to call pop idol Mima. So this is a vision of herself dressed in her costume from the Cham days. And pop idol Mima looks at her in the subway window and says that she refuses to do this rape scene. So this is the start of a psychotic break, but also it's kind of that thing that you said you don't like, Trace, about the dream sequences where we are getting an idea of what is going through Mima's head, but it's because of her own projections.
Yes. Yeah, but again, though, it is pushing the narrative forward in a way that I don't find egregious, you know?
Oh, no, I fucking love it. That's one of the reasons why I like this movie, because it's an unreliable female protagonist who may or may not be going mad. Spoiler alert. It's both.
Yeah, which is great.
And I think that's why I like it, because it is so seamless in the way that it does this. All of these scenes with pop idol Mima actually feel warranted, and they do feel like they're advancing the narrative, but also giving us insight into the character. Like, all of these other movies that try to play at this don't do it as well as this movie.
Well, and let's bear in mind, though, that traditionally in horror films, dream sequences are used for cheap jump scares. And there's no... Sure, you can argue, oh, it's supposed to show how the protagonist is being, like, scared. Or no. It is a filler, buffer thing that is used in horror films. And this is not that.
Yeah. So after we have seen this very difficult rape scene get filmed, she gets taken out to dinner by her agent, as though that's supposed to make everything okay.
I know. He's like, I'll take you out to dinner as a treat, as like a...
He literally says,
you did it.
As a treat.
Because you got raped real well in that scene. Here you go. Here's a burger.
Terrible. Yeah. This dude just really does not care about her.
It is interesting how they shoot all the women in that scene, or draw, or whatever. All the women, because like there's the one that's smoking the cigarette that's like the exec who like stops smoking and just is like paralyzed. And then there's also Rumi, who, you know, is very disturbed by it, but also is going through her own stuff, as we find out.
To put it mildly.
Way of putting it. So, interestingly enough, after Mima gets home, she sees that all of her fish have died. So we've earlier gotten a hint that she's not the most present person in her apartment sometimes, so she forgets to feed the fish on occasion.
She's working.
Yeah, because she's busy. She's not always there. But yes, apparently she has either been away long enough or she has not been paying attention and all of her fish have died. And as you said, Trace, this is the moment where she kind of has the breakdown. So she does have a tantrum. She takes down the poster on the wall and she once again sees pop idol Mima in the mirror. And then we cut from this. So it's like, okay, we're taking away all the remnants of who I was as a pop idol, but she still shows up in the mirror. And then we immediately transition over to Mamania and we see that he is like maybe living underground. He's got this little cubbyhole kind of apartment, and it is a shrine to her.
It's the Helga Pataki Arnold shrine. And hey, Arnold, like this is, oh my God.
God.
It's terrifying. Like when you see this, it's exactly what you expected of this character. He's just so gross in this movie. So to see what he's got, you're very worried for her.
I'm sorry. I did want to point out, because one thing she said when she was having her breakdown, she says out loud, she's like, I didn't want to do the scene, but I didn't want to disappoint anyone. Have y'all, Joe, maybe I've asked you this before, but and y'all answer if you don't want to, but have y'all ever been in a situation that could have been sexual and the person, instigated and you didn't really want to, but you kind of like, I don't want to like make them mad. So you went ahead and did it anyway?
Yes.
Yes, me too.
I have as well. I don't consider that, like, sorry, for me personally, sexual assault, but it's a thing where it's like, I didn't want to do this, but I did it anyway.
Well, it is in its own way. When someone has power over you and pressure you into anything, that is assault or harassment, however you want to say it, or power playing, it is not right.
Yeah, it is really complicated, right? And particularly as people have become increasingly more aware of their impact on other people, and even just a turn of phrase, letting people say no, even though they started off by saying yes. Like, I think we're all just so much more cognizant of it. And I think a lot of people try to overreact by saying like, oh, well, now I can't even touch someone or compliment someone or hold the door open for them or else I'll get accused of this. And it's like, no, that's literally not what we're saying. We're saying that if you do something to try to produce a particular result that is going to make someone feel uncomfortable, or that you can leverage that, like you were saying, Jenny, if you have a power over someone, like that is a form of abuse, and people just need to be very cognizant of it.
Well, again, speaking just for me personally, it was never like I never felt pressured, but I have historically had issues with confrontation, which would include just telling, like, rejection or telling someone no. So it wasn't even like they were pressuring me, they really want to do it. It was like they instigated it, and I didn't want to have the confrontation of I don't want to do this. So I just rolled with it, Yeah.
I mean, the problem is there's just so much shame that can get wrapped up into sexual encounters or power plays in general, right? So it doesn't sound like that person did anything wrong, but it sounds like you had issues where the relationship wasn't as clear, where you didn't feel like you could comfortably say no without, like, disappointing someone shouldn't mean that you should have to have sex with them.
Exactly. And that's what I did for many years of my life. Sorry, this isn't just one person, by the way. This is like a collection of like my slutty years.
Well, I think there's a difference between saying yes and then still feeling okay, and saying yes, but somebody pressures you. I think what Khan's trying to say specifically with Perfect Blue is that women in the industry don't have any agency
Yeah.
to say no. And Rumi actually does try to say no for her.
Mhm.
But also there's different feelings underneath why she wants to say no for her, because both of them at the end of the day want to control her and what she wants to do. And she doesn't have a say at all.
Mhm.
She just has to agree with one or the other and how they see her.
Yeah, I didn't mean this to be like I am like linking myself to Mima.
I hear you.
Yeah, it was more of a tangent, like that like struck a memory in my brain.
No, yeah, I hear you.
So I think what you're saying, Jenny, really comes to light in the following scene. So it's a bit of a montage of Mima doing interviews as she gains more prominence on Double Bind. And we also see the reactions of the otaku, her quote-unquote fans or people who were following her career. And they're talking about how the show isn't great, or they just, they don't think that her performance is all that good, or they're wondering what she's doing with her career. But in all of these interviews, she basically has to sit there and talk about how the transition has been and how she's super grateful to have once been a part of the girl group. But, now she's really excited about this new thing. And you can see she's having to regurgitate these talking points that she probably didn't have any say in, so that she comes off demure and feminine and innocent and all of these other things.
All the things that a pop star, and as a female pop star needs to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, interestingly enough, that interior monologue and or this threatening hallucination, pop idol Mima calls her filthy. She says that her reputation is tarnished. And then in what will come to be her kind of trademark move, she drops off the balcony and we just see this apparition hopping between streetlights as though she's just kind of jumping around for a bit of a stroll.
Mm-hmm.
I love the animation of how this character moves in this film.
And this is the dreamlike aspect too, which again, but it's also very unsettling. Like it's childlike, but also menacing.
Mm-hmm. So we move into the Double Bind parking garage, where we see screenwriter Shibuya, who is voiced by Yoku Shioya.
There you go.
Yeah, Shioya.
Okay. And this character, so the screenwriter, finds a ghetto blaster who is blaring Cham in an elevator. And then we cut to the doors opening, and he is dead, and his eyes are gone.
A ghetto blaster?
Yeah.
Is that a radio or a boombox?
Wait a minute. What?
It's like a boombox.
Is this a Canadian term?
I have never heard this term before.
You've never heard of a ghetto blaster?
No.
Hold on. No, I mean, I feel like maybe I have, but maybe I didn't connect what it was.
Sorry, yes, it is the same thing as a boombox.
Wait, hold on. Is this a Canadian term?
Jenny and I are like, what?
What the Sorry, I didn't realize this was going to disrupt everything.
I mean, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just like vibing, and then I was like, oh.
I've never heard that term before. That is fun. I love it when this happens on the podcast.
It's interesting. So I always said this is not a rape revenge scene, but in a way, Mamania is getting revenge on the screenwriter for Mima's rape.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I actually really like that as a concept. Also, boy, this poor guy gets his eyes gouged right out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's violent and bloody. I love the editing for this, just the transition between. Something bad is going to happen to this character. It's an underground parking lot at night.
In a horror movie.
Yeah, so this dude's not getting out, but like it's just the right amount of gore and the right amount of editing to be like, what you saw, and then we move on.
But P.S. though, wouldn't an interesting concept for a movie be like someone going and doing like revenge, like killing a bunch of screenwriters or directors of rape revenge films?
That'd be a fun slasher.
Oh my god! If someone makes that movie, you owe me money.
Trademark, copyright A24. Are you listening? Okay, so the other Cham girls, Rei, voiced by Shiho Niyama, and Yukio, who is voiced by Amiko Furukawa, they're preparing for this live performance, and they're talking shit about Mima. Like, it's interesting because I think in some ways they didn't mind her as a colleague, but they're also doing that sort of petty girl shit where they're like, well, now she's not a member of the group. And we hear she's doing a photo shoot with this man who is notoriously bad for getting women to take off their clothes.
And does she take off her clothes a lot as the movie continues? Or I'm sorry, does she get her clothes removed a lot as the movie continues?
Yeah, so we see the photo shoot with Murano, who is voiced by Masashi Abera, and this isn't softcore. Like, I think at one point a character says, oh, it's a softcore photo spread, and I was like, we're seeing everything here. It's kind of pornography. I was really shocked that Rumi would have let her do this, to be honest.
Yeah, I was surprised to see this, but I guess it goes to show that Rumi doesn't view this as offensive as a non-consensual rape scene.
Well, I do think it's important that we never see Rumi, like, she's not present at this photo shoot, and we don't see her consent to it. Like, we're just here doing this. So I wonder at this point how much Mima is, like, consulting her for some of these things.
Well, she's probably out, filling out that Mima's Room website. She's a little busy. She's a little preoccupied.
She's writing emails and filling up that diary. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Send in some faxes.
She's got to wait for the paper to go through.
Oh my God. It takes a long time to write out Traitor a dozen different ways on a single sheet of paper.
But she didn't even use the magazine cutout. She just wrote the fucking thing.
Yeah.
Artistry.
Mm-hmm.
A true artist. So, while watching the Cham performance, Mamania envisions Mima singing along. And I think this is one of those moments where it kind of throws you off the scent in terms of, like, red herrings, because you think, oh, well, Mamania is also having visions. He's seeing Mima still contributing to Cham. So maybe what Mima is experiencing either is or isn't real. Like, I think this confuses the narrative in the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yes, we also see that the diary corresponds to this event, and Mima is like, oh, I guess I was there. I don't know. I don't remember, but I'm seeing it here, and everything else in the diary has come to pass, so sure. And then this nude photo spread comes out, and Mamania loses his shit. He definitely buys all the copies. He fights other people who are trying to buy them.
Can't taint the image of your pop star. Can't have people see her. And
we have this man who is now trying to dictate how sexual a woman can be in her job. Like, oh, God.
I mean, yes, Trace, that's called every woman's existence ever.
There you go.
We should also note that Mamania is emailing with someone claiming to be the real Mima, and this person is suggesting that the other Mima, aka the one that we know and have been following, is an imposter and that they will be dealt with.
Yeah, this on a first watch was a bit confusing to me because I didn't know if this was the voices in his head talking to him or what was going on here.
Yeah, I think that's kept deliberately vague so that you're not quite sure, is there actually someone else who is contributing to this, or is he also just losing his mind? I mean,
I'm sure this is the intention, but I really for quite a bit thought we were getting like dissociative identity. Well, obviously, yes, because it's in the TV show within a show that we have dissociative identity disorder, but I really thought that's where we were going, and I love the fact that the movie just like pulls the rug out from under you on that.
Mm-hmm. So we get a couple more scenes from Double Bind, and we're starting to talk about things like double lives. So it's very much a case of art mirroring real life. Mm-hmm. And Mima ends up ruining this take because she is taking notice of Mamania watching her. So she's getting creeped out by him. She's starting to see him wherever she's going. And it's frankly ruining her day job. So...
Yeah, stalkers can do that.
Yeah, shockingly enough.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, it just fills your entire mind, and you can't focus on shit. It's not paranoia. It's just like a constant state of anxiety.
Yeah,
yeah, which you do have personal experience with.
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry. Sorry, I wasn't trying to bring that around to me, but yeah, no, yeah, I absolutely do, and it does really fucking suck. It sucks.
Yeah, it's really rough, and it's not helped by the fact that Mima is constantly confronted by not just the real life stalker who is ruining her day job, but also she's continuing to have these visions in public spaces now. So when she goes into the office, she sees pop idol Mima in the podcast recording that her former colleagues Ray and Yukiko are doing. So she ends up chasing it.
Podcast.
Do you not think it's a
90s?
podcast?
Joe.
Like, are they?
Joe, it's the 90s.
It's the radio.
We had podcasts.
Wait, they had podcasts in the
No,
they
it's
did
it's
not.
a live radio show.
Joe, you sound like a Gen Z person trying to understand.
This is cutting edge technology, folks. We have fax, we have the internet, and we have burgeoning podcasts in 1997.
I mean, okay, to be fair, the internet did exist, and a podcast is a program made available in a digital format for download over the internet. Sorry to
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. Yes.
On a podcast.
I'm accepting all apologies now.
But this is a complete hallucination, right? Like, this is just her hallucination.
Yes. Yeah. Like, I think she's triggered by seeing her former colleagues doing well, and she's like, "Oh, I miss being a part of this." And then she has to chase it to decide whether or not, like, this thing that is ruining my life, is it real? So she does end up following pop idol Mima out through the building, down into the street. She almost gets hit by a car.
A lot of almost car crashes in this movie.
This is true. Yes.
Honestly, I never want to hit that point of psychosis where I'm like so disoriented of where I'm going that I almost get hit by a moving vehicle.
Oh my god.
Boy. It does feel like a particularly cinematic thing, right? Like, oh, you're so out of it that you stumble into traffic. And I'm just like, I've never stumbled into traffic except when I'm not looking at a traffic light because I'm on my phone.
Well, have you ever been hallucinating about a doppelganger of yourself, Joe?
Admittedly, no. But fun weird fact, the way that pop idol Mima bounces around, she just kind of like boing, boing, boings.
Mm-hmm.
My like imaginary friend that I would see when I would take car rides as a child moved this exact same way.
Wait.
Oh, mine did too.
Okay, wait. I had an imaginary friend too, but I never actually saw him. You're telling me you actually saw your imaginary friend when you were a kid?
No.
Yes.
Wait, what?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah, like I would envision
like you saw
it.
in your head. Oh,
yes,
yeah,
it was
that's,
clearly
okay,
in
that's
my
what
head, but it was like, there's my friend. Like I would look at the car window and I would like imagine that I
Envision
had
them
this
there.
character who was accompanying us.
No, I mean, I guess I had an imaginary friend too. His name was Luli, but I never thought I actually saw. I would look at the area where I would say he was, but I wasn't hallucinating a person there.
I don't think Joe said he was hallucinating. He said he would imagine the person in that space.
He said when he saw
like,
the
and
person.
Yeah, like I would picture it. I would like fill in the image. Like, did you never actually like? So you?
I did.
How would you have a friend but not even know what they would look like?
I don't know.
Like when you had conversations with them.
Just empty space. I just pretended like there was someone there, but it was almost like a faceless thing.
Okay, Tracy, you sound like a kid.
You
in a
sound
horror movie
crazy.
Now, all of a
Jenny and I are normal
sudden.
here.
You're like, I didn't see anything in a space. I stared at it and then
And had a full
I knew
conversation.
someone was there.
I
I'm
mean,
like,
here's
oh,
the
okay,
funny
that
thing
sounds
is
like a
this though.
ghost.
I actually don't really remember talking to my imaginary friend. My parents said I did, but I would I would frequently blame things that I did on my imaginary friend, like when I drew on the walls with crayon.
You're just a brat.
So what you're saying is my imaginary friend isn't up to snuff with your imaginary friends.
Mine was fully realized.
Mine bounced in the car window like Joe's. I thought that was a me thing. That's interesting.
That's actually really
interesting.
funny.
Okay, yeah, so clearly Mima not doing great. Rumi checks her into her bed. But again, this turns out to actually just be a double bind scene when she wakes up in bed and you're like, nope, this is her character who is having like a double life on this TV show. So it's confusing. We're back to shooting where she messes up the line, and only this time it's just not done in the rain and she actually hits her mark. And so I love these kind of repetitions where she's waking up in bed, she's shooting, we're seeing it multiple times, and you have to pay close enough attention to realize, okay, is this double bind? Is this fantasy or is this real life?
Mm.
So she ends up waking up in bed, and then Rumi is there, and Rumi is like, no, I was here yesterday. This is all happening. Don't worry, you're fine.
Or is she gaslighting her?
Right? He was like, cool, let me just break this glass. Really upset.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do learn that Mima's character is going to be the killer on Double Bind. So this is the eventual reveal.
Ah, yes, love a reveal where the raped woman is actually the killer. Okay. Made up. Dismissed. Not real. Couldn't
Not
possibly
real.
happen.
No. Why would she do such a thing? Question mark, question mark. And then we get the real life murder of Murano, who is killed by a screwdriver. And I'm curious, Trace, this was your first time watching this. Did you see Mima commit this murder, or did you see Rumi? Or did you see both?
Well, the interesting thing is this. Looking back on it, I don't know what I thought this was, but so this is a bit later, but we get the reveal later whenever Rumi walks out in Mima's clothes. And Rumi is noticeably larger in size than Mima. And so I didn't even think Rumi at all in this scene because the frame of the person attacking was still pretty petite.
Right.
But whenever Rumi comes out in that outfit, and it's still like we're supposed to believe it's Mima, but we pan up starting with Rumi's stomach going up to her face. And before we see Rumi's face, I was like, did they make her bigger? And then we got the reveal, and I was like, oh, shit.
Yep. I love the way that this is shot / edited. Like, scenes from this murder are directly overlaid with the photo shoot that Murano did. So it's, again, very much like, oh, because you did this to Mima, this is what happens to you. Like, we're going to kill you in the same way that you shot her, aka that you killed her innocence and her naive virginity and all that kind of stuff.
And this is a really brutal murder scene.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mima does end up finding this bloody shirt in her closet, which would seem to confirm that she was either the one who committed the murder or that she was at least there.
Womp womp. We'll find out soon.
So on the Double Bind set, the crew is taking bets as to who will be killed next, like which person close to Mima is going to be the next to go. And she's preparing to film this murder sequence, which is the character in Double Bind's revenge for that rape sequence earlier. So as she goes to film it, she imagines that the person she's killing is actually Murano, and she has a freak out, and then she wakes up back in bed. So you're like, did she film it? Was the freak out real? What's
going on in this movie? What's happening?
Yeah, and this is revealed to actually be the resolution of Double Bind, and we learned that the character on the TV show has dissociative identity disorder, or DID.
Could you imagine if this movie actually had that be the resolution for the movie itself?
I mean, there are so many movies that have followed this trajectory. I was like, oh, that's why I called it an erotic thriller, because I was like, oh, this is Sisters. This is Dressed to Kill. This is like,
I love Sisters.
So many of those like 80s erotic thrillers are just like, yup, and the person did it because it was their identical sister that they killed 20 years earlier and then never got over.
Well, and that's also like, I mean, and maybe I'm way off base here, but I also got like shades of High Tension in this, to where I wonder if Aja was influenced by this at all.
Quite possibly.
Yeah, I don't know. But the reveal isn't as obnoxious as the one in that movie.
No. More satisfying, for sure. So everyone leaves for the rap party because now Double Bind is over, and this is when Mamania attacks Mima with a knife. He cuts off her clothes, he tries to rape her, and she ends up killing him with one side of a hammer.
Yes.
And this goes on for quite a long time as well.
Yeah. Not the murder, unfortunately. I could have done with a longer murder and less of the rapey stuff.
Well, I was going to say, so I'm not used to seeing animated nudity unless it's in a video game. Like, I actually have seen more nudity in video games than I have in, like, animated TV shows and movies. There's a lot of boobs in this movie. Mima's boobs, specifically in this movie. I don't know. How, do y'all view this as, it is degrading because it's meant to be degrading, but I don't know. I don't know what my question is. I guess I don't know. Like, why are we seeing so much nudity on this character?
Well, I mean, I can't tell you why, but I do think it is a commentary on how we view women.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that this scene specifically shows the hypocrisy of men, and that if, like, you feel like you own an idol and you have this image in your head that she is a certain way, and in this case, the certain way is innocent,
Mm-hmm.
and then she becomes less innocent. I think the psychology behind it is that you want to ruin her
Yeah.
in the most possible way you could think of, and ruining her to you would mean to go over the line that you had always envisioned her as, which is just really fucked up, honestly. But I think that is the psychology behind it often.
Yeah, it's almost like, oh, this is what you want, right? Here you go. You asked for it.
Yeah, basically that.
It's also such a weird form, like it's the ultimate form of consumption, right? Like it's not just I impose my values or my morals on you. It's that I need to possess you physically. I will debase you because that is what you apparently have earned in my like fucking twisted mind. But also the best way for me to still accomplish that fandom that I so eagerly covet is to literally invade you physically.
To soil you,
Yeah.
and so that no one else can
Yeah.
have you. It's really fucked up,
So
and it's
fucked
like this
up.
really like messed up way of thinking, and a lot of this is why uncontrollable fandom makes me uncomfortable. This movie like personifies it very well.
Yeah.
This is also why it's like, personally, when anything like a picture of mine gets like more than like 20 likes, I start freaking out mentally because I don't want to be seen by that many people, and I'm like, it just makes me uncomfortable, and sometimes I regret it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like, that should be normal though. Sometimes people feel okay with that, and that's fine, but like there is this thing about people perceiving you, and you like they get this image in your head of who you are just based off of images, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Or even like a built up persona in this case.
Yeah, I mean, because part of the reason that Mamania feels comfortable doing this, and even Rumi to a certain extent, is because they have decided who Mima is, right?
Yeah.
So
It's weird.
I think it's such a weird mixture of the femininity of this character and how they want to control her sexuality, but also how they think that they know who she is and what she should stand for and all of these kinds of things. Like, it's the dangers of being a public figure where people think that they know you and therefore have a say in who you are, they want to control you, and so on. And I think when you filter that through a gendered lens, it just becomes far scarier, because men in particular, when it comes to women, are dangerous.
Yeah, and I think this movie really, basically encapsulates that whole feeling and that whole vibe, and I think it makes it relatable and makes it very visible to why it is so uncomfortable. So while the scene is very long, I think it is necessary to make the viewer very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. And then we at least get the pleasure of seeing this character violently dispatched.
Well, and also
Yes.
because he's not the man is not the main villain of this movie. It's another
It's true.
woman.
He's the secondary villain.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which is that fantastic sort of double twist, right? Because I think a lot of people could watch this movie and say, oh, well, this Mamania character is very obvious, right? He's shallow. He's coded as evil from the minute we see him, by the way he's drawn, by the way he's voiced, and so on. But he's only one of the villains. And you could argue he's the lesser of the two, because he's so straightforward, we understand him implicitly from the jump. Whereas Rumi is complicated and messy, and it goes against societal expectations, like a woman shouldn't be doing these kinds of things. What is going on here?
Well, so I know that Rumi's motive is basically the same as Mamania's motive, but also she wants to replace. Because do y'all read Rumi as queer?
So I do, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to advocate for this film on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely do. I think that it's in the same way Black Swan is queer, this is queer.
Aronofsky, goddammit.
He did it.
I mean, it's so fascinating though, right? Because like she clearly identifies with Mima because she used to be Mima, right? Like she used to have this career, and then it clearly either didn't turn her into an idol or she got out of it. But she has designs about how Mima should act, but also she wants to be Mima, and maybe not just in that sort of platonic friendly way, like, I will murder you, I will wear your skin, I will become you, I will go inside you.
Well, okay, so like we're here already,
yes.
but what is so creepy, Rumi brings her quote unquote home to her room.
Mm-hmm.
And then as Mima looks around, she's like, wait, this is...
Because the fish are alive!
The fish are alive and the post is back in the wall, baby!
She has a fucking doppelganger room that she brings Mima to. This
Love
reveal...
it.
Again, I did not see this coming at all. I had no idea this is where we were heading. I love this entire reveal. This is fantastic.
Oh, it's so fantastic. Yeah. And the fact that she's got a similar but not quite the same costume, like she's tweaked it or she's brought back the old one, maybe the one that she used to wear, and you're just like, oh, girl, no. So it should be noted, like, folks, if you have not seen this, it's not like, oh, it's just a casual reveal. It's like this older woman, this larger woman is dressed up in a pop idol costume. We continue to see pop idol Mima. So she looks exactly like Mima, only she's dressed as she does when she's on stage. Intermixed with Rumi wearing this outfit. So like this whole climax takes place as though it could still be happening in Mima's mind, or how Rumi sees herself in pursuit of Mima. So like the hallucination and the kind of dreamlike confusion imagery persists all the way through the climax.
And I'm actually legitimately, maybe some people don't know about this, but the climax of this movie is, I want to say, a 5-minute long chase scene. And I'm surprised this isn't mentioned because, we always talk, oh, like Helen and I Know You Last Summer, Wendy and Prom Night, Mima in Perfect Blue. Here's a good chase scene right fucking here.
You know why, Trace?
It's cartoon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, actually, that's exactly it. And people have preconceived notions. This is why Perfect Blue probably took a lot longer to get into the horror community versus like the anime community.
Right.
Which is hilarious because this really, like, the anime community has some fucked up people in it.
So does the horror community.
Like any genre, but
Right.
like, oh man, there's layers to that one that sometimes make me uncomfortable. But yeah, it's so fascinating that people inherently dismiss animated films that are designed to be viewed from adults when they aren't in that anime culture already, which I admit I was one of those people for a really long time, because I had people in my Japanese classes that made me feel uncomfortable sometimes with the way they basically idolized and glorified a lot of stuff that this movie kind of gets into.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's tough too. I mean, like, there's always been a stigma against animated works. Like, even nowadays, like, think about it. At last year's Oscars, they literally introduced Best Animated Film as though it was a kid's movie. And you're just like, no, that's not actually accurate. But, I mean, for me, it kind of harkens back to what you were asking about earlier, Trace, where you said, like, oh, there's like an uncomfortable amount of female nudity in this movie. And I think a large part of it is about Kon trying to get us to think about that male gaze, getting us to think about how we view and how we sexualize women's bodies. But also, I just think it's like, this is a very distinctly adult movie. Like, these are adults with sexual interests and psychoses, and they are working through their internal shit. Like, no part of this anime feels appropriate for anyone like underage.
And I think maybe that's why. So yeah, Jenny, maybe I have these preconceived notions about animation sometimes in my head too. And so when I'm seeing a rape scene, when I'm seeing nudity, when I'm seeing violence like this, it's the juxtaposition against what has historically been a medium for children that makes it seem more taboo in a way.
But I think at the end of the day, I think that is a big difference between an American sees animation versus someone else sees animation. Like, in Japan specifically, and anime culture, anime is made for adults. Like, it's adult storytelling. Manga is made for adults. It's adult storytelling. And that's why they have different, like, layers to anime. I mean, like, you mentioned there's a lot of nudity in this, and I'm like, well, hentai exists.
Yeah.
In my mind, which actually I feel like is the most safe way to digest porn because it's all animated.
Yeah. what is the gay version? It's yaoi, right? Is the gay porn?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's true.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because I do find that I like the culture of anime in that it is built for adults. Like, it is something that is consumed by adults, and no one judges you for it.
Yeah,
which I think is like very different from an American mindset specifically, where people will judge you for watching an adult cartoon.
Oh yes.
That being said, sometimes people from any country get really weirdly obsessed with adult cartoons.
No, and I say this, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, well, I do watch that Harley Quinn cartoon, which is full of blood and gore and very R-rated.
That's true. You also watch like Big Mouth and stuff, right?
Yeah, I guess. But I guess this is not going to make any sense, but this is clearly how my brain is processing this. Those are funny. This is serious.
Oh.
Like, and moving into this chase scene, like, it's the way that, you know, we've talked about how Mima runs and kind of like glides and bounces around. It's even scarier in this scene specifically because beforehand you're just like, oh, like, this is just her hallucination, whatever, she's a crazy bitch, whatever. No, she's really in danger right now. This is a real person chasing her, and she's doing it like this. I mean, not really, but like, that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, and she seems unstoppable, right? Like, this chase does go on forever. We're going along rooftops. We're falling multiple stories down into alleyways. The violence here is very real. Like, Mima does not get off scot-free. She gets stabbed in the shoulder, and we're breaking store windows. Okay, so I want to pause here because I'm curious from both of your perspectives. Does Rumi try to die by suicide here?
I do not think so. I think she is so consumed. It's like by losing the wig, she doesn't know what to do. So I don't think she sees anything. She stopped trying to kill Mima.
It's like Michael Myers losing the mask.
Yes, like she has no vision of anything around her except this wig. That is how I view this scene.
Disorientation.
Yeah, it's her entire identity, right? It's who she's created herself to be.
But do you agree with that, Jenny, or do you have a different reading?
No, I definitely agree with that. I do not think it is a suicide attempt.
Yeah.
Okay.
But oh my God, did I not groan, but did I oof whenever she leans over on that shard of glass?
Oh boy.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is, I think it's all disorientation. But then again, you could see it the other way, where perhaps in death she becomes immortalized as her.
Yeah, like she never is proven wrong because she never got exposed.
Right.
Yeah. So it could be a quick. Yeah, I could see the other argument actually now.
Yeah.
In any case, one of the saving graces of this, so we haven't really talked about this, but this is obviously a huge subversion. We've got Rumi, who is a female serial killer. Potentially. I guess it depends on how you want to read who did the murders. I always read it as Rumi did the murders and Melania did like the website and the creepy stalker shit.
Oh, you think he did the website?
Well, he was being fed by Rumi, right? Like, she's the one who's
right,
emailing
that's right.
him,
Yeah,
but he's
that's
the
right.
one who set it up and is obviously stalking her by taking all the pictures and that kind of stuff.
Right, true. Okay.
But she's still the puppeteer.
Yeah. I kind of see it as her thing still at the end of the day, using him.
Yeah.
But do you see Melania doing any of the murders, or were they all Rumi?
I think it's all me.
Yeah, I guess the thing is, though, like, here's the thing, though. So do we think that Rumi believes she is Mima when she is communicating with Melania? Or do we think that Rumi is aware of what she is doing?
No.
Okay.
No, I think she's totally lost it.
Yeah.
Because in the end,
That's the whole point.
You know, when she's in this psychiatric hospital, we hear that every once in a while, Rumi will have like a lucid day and she'll remember who she is, but most of the time she is pop idol Mima.
That's also where I got high tension from, by the way, was this final scene.
Yeah. I do like that she doesn't die, And she doesn't die because Mima doesn't exact vengeance or revenge or any kind of aggression on her. Mima saves her from certain death.
Oh, yeah.
I love that because it shows that she cared about her still.
Yes.
And I feel, unlike Mimania, I think she has more empathy for Rumi because of their shared relationship.
Well, I also think, and maybe this is wrong, Rumi doesn't know, as we just established, Rumi doesn't know what she's doing. She is literally psychotic to the point where she has created an entirely different identity for herself.
Yes.
So there's a lack of consciousness there where I can't extend that same leniency to Mimania, who I think he's fully conscious of what he's doing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just so interesting, like in a very subtle way though. Like the movie doesn't hit you in the head with a hammer about it. But it just kind of leaves you with this, right? Like there's something sad and tragic and a little bit pathetic about what Rumi has been diminished to, like what life in the industry has done to her. And we learned that Mima has gone on to become even more famous because she's getting very publicly recognized by people at this hospital. But she's still totally fucked up because when she gets into the car at the end of the movie, she has to reassure herself that she is real when she looks at the rearview mirror.
I actually read this totally differently. I read this as like closure of her being like, yep, this is me. And like, I'm happy with my life now.
Jenny, how do you read this?
I mean, the scene is so wild. It's like him throwing you at the very end where he's like, but is she the real thing?
Is it real? What's
I'm
real?
like, it's the spinning top.
You're right. No, I didn't even consider an alternative read, so I'm really glad you both brought this up. But yeah, no, because I'm like, her career is successful, people are recognizing, I'm like, oh my god, that couldn't be Mima. She would be at a mint. So she's made it. And so I totally, maybe it's the eternal optimist in me, but I totally view this as a happy ending.
I mean, I think that's nice. Probably the way you're meant to read it, with that underlying question. And then for me, I'm like, yeah, but we just saw what the future could be for her. Like what the industry does to girls like her. Chews them up, spits them out, and turns them into Rumis.
Well, I guess that's the other thing too. Yeah, I mean, I empathize with Rumi, but we don't get that side of it. I mean, we can infer exactly what you just said. She was chewed up and spit out by this industry, but we don't get any of that because unfortunately, and that was Kon's idea, right? Because he said, like, so many of the horror films, they want to like go into the killer stuff. I want to do the victim.
Yeah.
So I get it, but I'm also kind of like, oh, but like, you know what actually would be really interesting if there was a companion film to this where it's the whole film but told from Rumi's POV.
Oh man.
It would lose some of the mystique, but as a character study, I would find that very fascinating.
For sure. I mean, we haven't talked about it. I think Tracy and I talked about it offline, but for me, the shot that absolutely sells this movie is during the chase scene where you see Rumi running, like we see pop idol Mima gliding down the street, and we see Rumi's reflection, like what she actually looks like, and she is haggard and out of breath and sweating and gasping and just terrifying. And we get to see both of these, and they're both true, at least to Rumi, but it's so fucking visually captivating. Really good. And I think that for me, that's the whole thing. Like, this movie is stunningly gorgeous. It's terrifying. It has so much going on, but it's also in some ways incredibly simplistic. Like, the story it's telling is that what we do to female starlets will just absolutely destroy them because we are shit to them. And it's so simple, and yet everything about this movie just works for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think a lot of this movie works for me. It was one that I instantly loved. I think Kon is one of the greatest directors of all time, even with like a small filmography. I think he just nails it in every film. He just nails it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's Perfect Blue. So, what are your final thoughts on this film, everyone?
I mean, I kind of just said mine.
Yeah, that's it. Okay.
I did too. Trace, what did you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, as a first-time watch, I quite enjoyed this. I honestly feel the need to go watch it again to kind of pick up on more of these things that we discussed today, because, I mean, we talked about things I didn't even consider during my viewing yesterday. But yeah. I think it's very beautiful. At the risk of simplifying it too much and saying it's a hell of a twist, I think it's a hell of a twist. I really, really enjoyed this, and I'm glad you introduced it to me, Joe.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm just super happy that more people seem to be taking notice of it, and I hope it becomes maybe a bit of a gateway to other anime films, or maybe just other anime horror films.
My God, if we actually get not theatrically released, but like if we get it like an animated, be it CGI or 2D horror film, that would be awesome. I would love to see that.
Oh man, I feel like now you're just inviting people to be like, "Oh, Trace,
I know.
Let me draw you a list."
Here's this one. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about Rob Zombie's The World of El Super Beasto. That's fine. But anyway, okay. Well, that is Perfect Blue, everyone. So before we announce what we're covering next week, Jenny, where can people find you on social media?
Oh, you can find me at Jenny Lee X33, and Lee is spelled Leigh, and that's Jenny with a Y.
Awesome.
And it's the same handle everywhere. Twitter, Letterboxd.
Keeps it simple, right?
Serialized.
Oh, man. Well, if you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at HorrorQueers, or shoot us an email at horrorqueers@gmail.com. Find us on Letterboxd to keep track of all the films we've covered, or go to our YouTube channel to check out our interviews with various horror filmmakers, as well as our monthly hangouts where we talk about hot button issues with some of our peers, like Jenny. And if you want to chat with other listeners, please join our Horror Queers group over on Facebook. If you want to show us some love, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you want to give us money, please come support more Horror Queers by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. This month, we got episodes discussing the morals and ethics of true crime, courtesy of shows like Dahmer, the horror satire The Menu, and we're playing a bit of catch-up with episodes on Barbarian and Smile, since we weren't able to cover them when they actually hit theaters because there was too much shit that was coming out.
It was a lot.
We've also got an audio commentary on the sequel that's better than the original, The Collection, which will be celebrating its 10th anniversary this month.
Woot.
Yes. But Joe, we're gearing up towards American Thanksgiving, because I learned that Canadian Thanksgiving is very different. So what are we covering next week?
Yeah, we're going to go a little bit more family-friendly next week, Trey. So even though it's not animated, as you mentioned, we will be celebrating American Thanksgiving, and we're going to do a little bit of Addams Family Values, just to, really celebrate the holiday.
I act like I was surprised again this is happening. I fucking love this movie.
I haven't seen this movie in probably 25 years. I'm excited to revisit it.
Joe, okay, I love that you're saying it's like family friendly, because it is like Brady. It's the very Brady sequel version of the Addams Family. Like the innuendos in this movie are endless.
Yeah, I mean, I have fond memories. I watched the first one a lot, and the second one not as much, but I remember them being much smarter than people realized.
That's really funny. I watched Values constantly growing up. I didn't even know there was a first movie until I hit high school, probably.
Oh my God.
I know.
Okay, we'll talk about that
next week. But anyway, until next week, we can cross out Perfect Blue.
Yes, and Jenny, thank you as always for your expertise.
Thank you for inviting me, as always.
All right, and we'll cross out Horror Queers.
Atlas Avenue. A long stretch of road that encompasses everything the city of Kennett Heights has to offer. Neon lights, traffic, crime, the hustle and bustle of everyday life, and the craziest of characters. My office was above it all. My name is James Locke, and I'm a PI.
Hello, Mr. J. How the hell you doing today?
Good, Edith. Nearly every year I have a new case. New people to meet, new clues to discover, and new problems to solve. But I do it the old-fashioned way. No technology. Nothing post-1950. Hell, I don't even listen to podcasts, but you should. Atlas Avenue Beat is a spoof of the film noir genre with goofy characters, tons of wordplay, and non-stop raunchy humor. There's also 3 whole seasons out right now with more on the way. Just search for Atlas Avenue Beat wherever you listen to podcasts or visit us online at bloody.fm.
It was late in the afternoon when the professor and I took our way towards the east, whence I knew Jonathan was coming.
Jonathan Harker has asked me to note this, as he says he is hardly equal to the task, and he wants an exact record kept.
Dear Madam Mina, I have read your husband's so wonderful diary. Strange and terrible as it is true. I will pledge my life on it.
God preserve my sanity, for to this I am reduced. Safety and the assurance of safety are things of the past.
I am in hopes that I shall see more of you at Castle Dracula.
Listen to Regarding Dracula wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm.